The exodus of the people of Israel from Egypt, where they were slaves, is the greatest redemptive act in the entire Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament. But how did they get there? And why were they slaves? And how and why did God redeem them? In the answers to these questions lies one of the most incredible stories ever told, a story on a cosmic scale, with kings and gods, pharaohs, Joseph, the parting of the Red Sea, and the giving of the Ten Commandments. And through all this, God would redeem His people Israel and point to the ultimate redemption still to come in Jesus Christ. Abraham would have a son named Isaac, and Isaac would have a son named Jacob, and Jacob would have 12 sons who would become the 12 tribes of Israel. And one of those sons was named Joseph. It says that Jacob loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he was a son born to him in his old age. And when his brothers saw that their father loved Joseph more than them, they could not speak even a kind word to him. And then Joseph had a dream in which he saw his father and mother and brothers bowing down to him, a dream given to him by God. And when he told this to his family, they were incredulous and said, "Shall we bow down to you?" Then one day, Joseph's brothers were out tending the flocks, and Jacob, their father, sent Joseph to go check on them, for Joseph had stayed back home. And when they saw him from far distance, they said, "Look, here comes that dreamer. Let's kill him, throw him into a pit, and say that a ferocious animal killed him." But Reuben, who was the oldest, said, "Let's not kill him." Instead, they stripped him of his robe and they threw him down into a pit. And when a band of Ishmaelites came by, they sold him into slavery. Joseph was sold as a slave into Potiphar's household, Potiphar, who was a captain of the guard for the Pharaoh. But God was with him through this, and He blessed Joseph in all that he did. And Potiphar took note of this, how God, the God of Israel, was blessing him. And he put him in charge of all of his household. But one day, Joseph was alone in the house with Potiphar's wife. All the servants had gone out. And Joseph, who was a well-built and handsome man, was approached by Potiphar's wife. She said, "Come and sleep with me." And Joseph said, "How can I do this? I've been put in charge of all of my master's household. How can I do this wicked thing and sin against God?" For all sin ultimately is against God. And so he fled from the house. But when the master returned, his wife accused Joseph of accosting her. And so angrily, he threw him into prison. And there Joseph was left, utterly alone, without his family, without his friends, and having tried to do the right thing, he must have wondered where God was in all of this. Joseph's story reminds me of another story, the story of Ricky Jackson. Ricky Jackson was 18 years old and one of 5 children. And he was not a perfect kid, but he loved to serve. But one day his life would change forever when there was a robbery in his local neighborhood. And for some reason, perhaps because he wanted attention, a young 12-year-old boy named Eddie Jordan said that he had seen the crime, though he had not. And the case went to trial, and despite obvious discrepancies in the testimony, Ricky Jackson was convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment. And he would serve 39 years in jail for a crime that he did not commit. Anyone who has been falsely accused or who has had to suffer for something that they did not do can identify with this story. But God continued to be with Joseph even while he was in prison. God blessed him, and he gained the trust of the prison officials, and soon he was put in charge of the entire prison. And there were 2 who were there in jail with him, one a baker and another a cupbearer, who had dreams. And Joseph, with the power of God, correctly understood and interpreted these dreams. And he told the baker that he would never recover his position, and in fact he would be killed. But he told the cupbearer that in 3 days he would be restored to his position and would once again serve the Pharaoh. And he told him, when you are restored to service, remember me with kindness. Tell the Pharaoh about my situation, because I am a Hebrew who was carried off here into captivity, having done nothing to deserve this. But the cupbearer, whom he had helped, soon forgot him. But God continued to remember him. 2 years later, the Pharaoh himself would have a dream, and the cupbearer all of a sudden remembered about Joseph, and he told him about him. And so the Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and there Joseph began to tell him about his dreams and what they meant, again, through the power of God. The Pharaoh had 2 dreams. One was of 7 thin stalks of grain eating up 7 fat stalks of grain. The other was of 7 thin cows eating up 7 fat cows. And the meaning of this dream was that there were going to be 7 years of plenty in the land of Egypt, in which food would be plentiful. But the 7 years after this, food would be scarce, and in fact be far worse than that of the time of the plenty. And so Joseph told the Pharaoh to store up in the land during the time of plenty food for the lean years that were to come. When he heard this interpretation, when he saw that God was with him, put Joseph in charge of the entire land of Egypt, making him second in command. And Joseph wisely administrated the kingdom during this time, thereby saving not only Egypt, but many others as well. And God blessed Joseph with a wife and children. And the first child was named Manasseh, from the Hebrew word to forget. For Joseph said, God has caused me to forget my suffering and all of my father's household. The second child was named Ephraim, which means blessed. And Joseph said, God has made me twice as fruitful as before. But there was still the matter of his family, of his brothers who had sold him into slavery, and his father, whom he had not seen in years. And Joseph would have had the opportunity for redemption or revenge when his own family would come from Israel to Egypt in order to receive food during the time of famine. And when Joseph's brothers first came, they did not recognize him, and Joseph would test them in many ways.